We are living in a world where news of heinous crimes and unsolved mysteries dominate the headlines. From gruesome murders to unexplained disappearances, these cases captivate the public's imagination and leave us questioning what truly happened. We are all too familiar with tales of horror and tragedy. Few stories have captured the public imagination quite like the Hinterkaifeck murders. The brutal slaying of 6 people on a small Bavarian farmstead in 1922 remains one of the most infamous unsolved cases in German history. In this video, we will delve into the details of this disturbing case, examining the events leading up to the murders, the investigation that followed, and the various theories and speculations that continue to circulate to this day. Introduction. In the early 20th century, a gruesome crime took place at the Hinterkaifeck farm in Germany that remains a mystery to this day. The Hinterkaifeck murders, as they came to be known, have captured the imagination of true crime enthusiasts for decades. In this video, we will explore the details of the crime, the suspects, and the strange occurrences that surrounded the case. The Hinterkaifeck murders are intriguing not only for the gruesome nature of the crime, but also for the strange occurrences that surround it. From haunted properties to clairvoyance, the case is shrouded in mystery and the paranormal. The lack of concrete evidence, the remote location of the farm, and the reclusive nature of the Gruber family have all contributed to the case's enduring appeal. Background. The Hinterkaifeck murders took place in 1922 on a remote farm in Bavaria, Germany. The farm was owned by the Gruber family. Andreas, his wife Cecilia, their daughter Victoria, and Victoria's 2 children, Joseph and Cecilia. The family also employed a maid named Maria Baumgartner, who lived with them on the farm. The farm was located in a secluded area, surrounded by dense forest and farmland. The nearest town, Hinterkaifeck, was approximately 1 mile away, and the farm was accessible only by a narrow footpath. The family had no telephone or electricity, and they relied on a well for water. In the days leading up to the murders, strange occurrences were reported on the farm. The family heard footsteps in the attic and found footprints in the snow that led to the farm but didn't lead back. They also discovered a newspaper on the farm that no one had bought. The family's keys had also gone missing several days before the murders, leading some to believe that the killers had stolen them to gain access to the farm. On the afternoon of March 31, 1922, a search party was organized to investigate the farm after neighbors became concerned that the family had not been seen for several days. When the search party arrived, they discovered the bodies of all 6 people on the farm. The family had been killed with a pickaxe, and the killers had remained on the farm for several days after the murders. Investigators found evidence that suggested the perpetrators had eaten the family's food and had even tended to the animals on the farm. The crime scene. The crime scene at Hinterkaifeck was horrific. The bodies of 6 individuals were found in the barn, each with fatal injuries to the head. The victims included Andreas Gruber, his wife Cecilia, their daughter Victoria, her 2 children, Cecilia and Joseph, and the family's maid, Maria Baumgartner. The youngest victim, Joseph, was just 2 years old at the time of his death. The first body to be discovered was that of the maid, Maria Baumgartner. Her body was found in her bedroom, where she had been bludgeoned to death with a mattock. Next to her body was the body of the youngest Gruber child, Joseph, who had been strangled with a length of wire. The other bodies were found in various locations around the farm. The body of Andreas Gruber was discovered in the barn, where he had been struck repeatedly with a blunt object. His wife, Cecilia, was found in her bedroom, where she had been bludgeoned to death with a mattock. The bodies of their daughter, Victoria, and their granddaughter, Cecilia, were found in the barn, where they had also been bludgeoned to death. The crime scene was a chaotic and gruesome sight, with blood and debris scattered throughout the property. The bodies had been left in various positions, suggesting that the killer or killers had taken their time moving from one victim to the next. One of the most chilling aspects of the crime scene was the fact that the killer or killers had stayed on the farm for several days after the murders. Evidence suggested that the perpetrator had fed the livestock, lit a fire in the stove, and even slept in the beds of the victims. This suggested that the killer may have been someone familiar with the farm and its routines. The crime scene at the Hinterkaifeck farm was a difficult and challenging site for investigators to process. The lack of concrete evidence and the contamination of the crime scene made it difficult to collect reliable evidence. However, the investigation did manage to uncover some interesting details that may provide clues as to the identity of the killer or killers. Investigation. The police investigation into the Hinterkaifeck murders revealed some disturbing details. It appeared that the killer had remained on the farm for several days after the murders, as food had been taken from the kitchen and the animals had been fed. It was also noted that Victoria's body had been moved from her bed to the barn, suggesting that the killer had taken time to drag her body across the property. One of the most significant challenges facing investigators was the lack of concrete evidence. The murder weapon was never found, and there were no witnesses to the crime. The police were forced to rely on interviews with suspects and witnesses, but these led nowhere. Despite the lack of physical evidence, investigators did manage to uncover some interesting details during the course of their investigation. For example, they discovered that the Gruber family had been receiving strange and threatening letters in the months leading up to the murders. Additionally, several witnesses reported seeing a man lurking around the farm in the days before the murders. In recent years, several attempts have been made to solve the Hinterkaifeck murders using modern forensic techniques. In 2007, a team of forensic experts conducted a thorough examination of the crime scene, using ground-penetrating radar to search for any buried evidence. However, despite these efforts, no new evidence was uncovered. The Hinterkaifeck murders remain one of the most enigmatic and perplexing unsolved crimes in history. The lack of concrete evidence, the remote location of the farm, and the reclusive nature of the Gruber family have all contributed to the case's enduring appeal. Despite the passage of almost a century, the case continues to capture the public's imagination and remains a source of fascination for true crime enthusiasts and armchair detectives alike. Possible suspects. One of the primary suspects in the case was the farmhand, Lorenz Schlittenbauer. Schlittenbauer had a history of disputes with the Gruber family and was rumored to have fathered Victoria's illegitimate child. He was initially questioned by police, but there was not enough evidence to link him to the murders. Jörg Siegel. Siegel was a former inmate at a nearby mental institution who had been released shortly before the murders. He was initially considered a suspect, but was ultimately ruled out due to a lack of evidence. Another suspect in the case was a traveling salesman named Andreas Pickler. Pickler had been seen in the area around the time of the murders, and several witnesses reported seeing him in the vicinity of the Hinterkaifeck farm. However, he too was ultimately cleared of any involvement in the crime. Despite the many suspects who have been considered in the case, no one has ever been definitively linked to the Hinterkaifeck murders, and the mystery remains unsolved to this day. Conclusion. The Hinterkaifeck murders remain one of the most chilling and enigmatic unsolved crimes in history. Despite years of investigation and numerous suspects, the killer or killers have never been definitively identified or brought to justice. The case has captivated the public imagination for nearly a century, and it continues to intrigue and disturb people to this day. The strange occurrences and possible occult connections surrounding the case only add to its intrigue, leaving many unanswered questions and unresolved mysteries. If you found this video informative and interesting, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more true crime content. And as always, stay safe and stay curious.